Ghost have just released their fifth album, and it's called Skeletá, and right out of the box, I just want to tell you, this album is awesome. I don't know about you, but whenever I'm particularly invested in a band, especially with Ghost, I've been following them for a while now, but across the board, if I'm invested in a band, I always get that little pang of nerves just before they release some new stuff, because you're just like, please God, or please Satan, I guess in this case, please continue to be as good as I think you are. Like, I know you're going to be good, but you're always hoping, and I'm here to tell you right now that Ghost have not dropped anything. In fact, they're only soaring to new heights. This album is an emotional, passionate debut for Papa 5. It feels like a very cathartic moment for Tobias Forge, the singer brains behind Ghost as an entity. It really feels like his kind of coming out parties. He's finally able to to start with, reduce the masking down to just a sort of little Phantom of the Opera style-y thingy over the front of the top half of his head, and obviously sort of freeing out the bottom half of his mouth for singing and emoting, which I think has somehow, well, not somehow, it's definitely translated into the writing of this album too. It feels like he knew that was going to happen, and I don't know, it just feels very liberated, which is amazing. The new instrumental tones are amazing. It's definitely got this big throwback to the 80s vibe, which I really like. It feels like a lot of the tracks have got quite 80s inspired synth intros and sort of synth lines running throughout the whole thing, which gives you flashbacks to all that good old school horror stuff. In fact, there's even a song, I think it's in Umbra, that has a like amazing little reference to Friday the 13th with the definitely paying homage to that kind of stuff, which I know for us the fact is stuff that Tobias Forge has grown up on, so it's nice to see that sort of side of it being enveloped, embraced. And finally, just the production across the whole album is just tight and snappy. Those harmonies are just getting better and better. But yeah, let's try and tackle this in a slightly formatted manner so that I'm not just rambling in your general direction. So first off, we're going to talk about production. It's immaculate. The whole way through, there is not a single note, there is not a synth out of place, there's not a guitar tone that isn't carefully thought. I mean, it's the kind of thing where it almost feels like it's a symptom of being a brainchild of a solo person. I know there's lots of other instrumentalists and writers who kind of come in and help him with aspects, but you can see this is one unified vision kind of rocking its way through the whole thing. So there is not an I not dotted or a T not crossed the whole way through. He's definitely done something different with the harmonies this time. I don't know whether or not it's because they're like, they just feel tighter, like the actual, maybe it's they're not panned as much as they used to be. It really gives this kind of ethereal feeling throughout the entire album where it almost feels like one voice, apart from when it's not meant to, when you've got this kind of like slightly more canon lines, like towards the end of Lacrima, for example, and a few other examples where the backing vocals like sort of take on their own line, and that's obviously then they start to overlap, but otherwise they just got this uniform tightness to them. In fact, it's very choral, it's got this very church choir aspect to it, which again is obviously very appropriate for the thematics the whole way through. Also, the new guitar tones I really like. I never thought that they would change the guitar tones this. I mean, it's a subtle, like, I think you probably need to know what you're listening for and be a bit of a fan to kind of like pick up on the subtle differences, but I don't know how to describe it without sounding like an insult, but I've always thought that Ghost's older, more traditional guitar tone, it almost sounds a bit nasal, and that is a good thing because it matches Tobias Forge's older, slightly more nasal delivery, and it's fine, like it's part of their tone, it kind of has this more rigid church-like feel to it. But in this one, not so much. There's some like flanger going on or some delay. It's got this kind of like 80s crunch to it that really makes me think of like, I don't know, old Guns N' Roses or Def Leppard. It's definitely got that kind of like more gritty feel to it, which is interesting because this album doesn't have any particularly heavy songs in it. Like maybe Marks of the Evil One, yeah, honestly, as they go, is basically the closest to one of your more traditional kind of like ghost metal songs in there. But that's fine because the guitar tone across the board just screams and wails, and it's like, I don't know, it's a very pleasing, cathartic feeling to sort of listen along to that. So production across the board, I have got, it's basically immaculate. So moving on to lyrics and themes. This is an interesting one because Tobias is very clearly singing from the soul with this one. So there's a little bit of context. I didn't know up until very recently, my girlfriend filled me in actually, that I didn't know Tobias' older brother of sort of 13 years his senior died the same day that Ghost released their original demos, I believe. And as a result, he's kind of had this sort of like trade-off of like his brother's life kind of breathing life into the Ghost project almost, and you can tell that there's a lot of this kind of like I don't know, the fleetingness of life kind of going through. Embrace the love of things you have because they don't last forever. So, which to be fair actually does somewhat mimic my own sort of like life philosophy of there basically is no strong meaning to life, so you might as well enjoy it on the way out. And that's something that I think that was really started to be explored upon during Right Here, Right Now, the film that came out in between these two albums, and that kind of was the message there about the impermanence of everything. And I think that is a theme that is definitely brought through in this one. So you've got a song like Cenotaph, which is 100% about his brother, which is amazing, and it's very heartfelt, and it's, yeah, I know, I like that song a lot. But then you get to the other side of that where there are tracks like I'm not going to pronounce it right, Missilia Amori and Excelsis. Both songs are good, they are well put together, they're catchy for the most part, but I find the lyrics to be a little bit heavy-handed. He found a couple of, they almost feel like they're from a musical, which is not a bad thing. Like, I'm sure that this is a deeply personal take on my end. I just found those songs to overdo the, I don't know, just the themes that he's talking about across the board, whilst a song like Satanized, which is interesting because that song was written for Impera apparently, which I think that does show actually it's got this slightly more overtly satanic feel to it. But again, obviously there's layers of subtext to it, and in that particular context the subtext apparently is talking about being so in love with somebody that you come across like you're being possessed by the devil. That, I like the sort of extra layer of kind of allegory to it, and that song is amazing across the board. So yeah, that kind of stuff. In fact, just across the entire album, it just feels like less overtly satanic, which is not really a criticism or a compliment. It's just, it's an interesting pivot. It feels like a lot of this album's, from just looking at the track names, seems more satanic than it is because a lot of the titles of the tracks are in Latin. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, like Marks of the Evil one absolutely has that like overtly satanic and like Four Horsemen of Death vibe. Even though I'm sure, again, there's loads of subtext there that I'm not picking up on the first couple of vibes. Bearing in mind, I have nuked and listened to this album as much as I can to keep myself sane, but you know, I probably only listened through it in its entirety maybe 4 times and a few select picks in between then and there. So yeah, no, bear in mind with that, with everything I'm saying, I probably should have started the review by saying that. But generally speaking, again, lyrically, thematically, it feels like he's unchaining himself, he's singing from the soul. It must feel good to do that. I don't know why, again, maybe the sort of like loss of the like, really ridiculous, overtly kind of pantomime masks, kind of bringing it more personal to him, has allowed him to sing from the soul more. And talking of that, we'll now move on to vocal performances. And again, awesome. I think this, from Tobias's voice perspective, is the strongest Ghost album there is. We were having a little listen through just their entire section. We've seen Ghost recently if you've been following the channel, so we're having a little listen to some of the Emphatissimum era stuff, and man, his vocals have come such a long way. Obviously the production helps with that kind of stuff as well, but again, it just feels like he's so unchained now. There are so many more little trills and moments and variations across the entire album. Every time he gets back to that chorus, that third final time when you're really ready for that big hit, he does this extra little vocal twirl, which I don't feel like it was as common beforehand. Again, I don't know whether this is because he's more confident singing this stuff live, knowing he doesn't have to battle through this mask, but the vocal performances themselves across the board are soulful and like more skilled, honestly, than I gave him credit for being able to do, which is, again, it's really nice. So yeah, no, absolutely love that aspect of it. Moving on to just my couple of standout songs. I think I'm probably not going to be alone in saying that Guiding Lights is probably one of my favorite tracks. I'm not including the first 3 songs just because they were released ahead of time. I've had a chance to really go for them, and you probably have too. So I'm going to pick songs that have only been released since this came out. And yes, Guiding Lights is awesome. That song is got this kind of uplifting, it almost fills the niche of like He Is or something like that within the album. It's got this, or Life Eternal even, it's very uplifting and soulful, and the harmonies are amazing. The harmonies are amazing. The outro, everything drops out and you just get one final little verse, or one section that comes out where it's just the harmony, you realize just how rich and deep they are. That song's awesome. For me, I also really liked Marks of the Evil One. That song has got like, it's heavier than a lot of the album, which I really like. It actually makes me think a little bit of the song The Four Horsemen by Aphrodite's Child, which is, I'm sure, maybe a deep cut, and maybe people know in the comments will have to let me know, but I don't know whether or not I'm just being influenced because the lyrics seem to be about the Four Horsemen of the Apocalypse, but that song has got a really fun sort of like chanting there kind of chorus to it, which again, I wish that they played that one live. If I get a chance to see them again, if I can go on this tour, I will. If not, in the future, but I would love to see that song live, because I just get the feeling that being in a crowd of 10,000 people all chanting there at the same time is going to be a very fun live experience. The same way that seeing Satanized live was really fun, because just being in a crowd of people all shouting blasphemy, infamy, what the f***, oh, I got that wrong, that's embarrassing, let's try that again. Blasphemy, heresy, it's a very fun atmosphere. It's conducive to being live. In fact, same as Year Zero, just the chanting stuff is good. So I like that song a lot. And then Umbra, which we did see live, but again, in a live context, it's quite difficult to like get the full scope of it, and I didn't realize how much I was gonna love that song. In the live, I won't spoil it, but there's a bit around the cowbell that is very prevalent throughout the entire song, which I mean, it's an easy comparison to make because of that cowbell, but I actually do think that the Blue Oyster Cult references run much deeper in that song. I mean, it almost like the cowbell came out afterwards when he wrote a song that clearly has this kind of like slightly older, more blues inspired kind of rock vibe to it. It's got a very driving pace the whole way through, and then because this album doesn't have any full instrumentals on it, there are several other songs, well, almost all of them have guitar solos, but some of them are more extended than others, and Umbra's one is long and it is awesome. It's this amazing kind of blues inspired back and forth between the synth, one of the synth lines, and I think both of the guitars, but they trade off. It's just, it allows the ghouls, those ones in particular, to really like speak their personality through it. It's amazing. I really think that it was a good creative decision on Tobias's part to have 10 full tracks coming through the album and have some of the more interesting musical, instrumentally styly stuff kind of embedded in some of the songs, and you find that there, especially in Umbra, so really check that one out too. But yeah, I think that is pretty much the run of most of the stuff I've got to say about this album. I just want to say again, it's just awesome. It's great to see him like unchained and emotional and writing stuff that it really feels like it's coming from the heart. That is definitely something that you can feel through that music. I can't recommend that kind of stuff enough. The step up on the vocals, like just from a technical standpoint, is really great. The harmonies are like, they're almost flawless. Thematically, it's not my favorite of their albums. I just find, I don't know, I like the slightly sillier, more camp, overt, kind of like talking about the collapses of civilizations and stuff like that, which I know is not, it's not sustainable to do that for the entire thing. I just find it's a little bit more tongue-in-cheek, and I like that aspect of the some of the older stuff, but that doesn't take away from any of the stuff on this one. A couple of the tracks I found to get a little bit samey with the sort of emotional send-off feel to them, but that's about as heavy a criticism as I can level at any of this album. So I would say that's really, really good. In fact, this album feels somewhat like Final Form Ghost, and that is something that I'm sure is quite cathartic for Tobias, and it's cathartic for me as a long-time Ghost fan to listen to. So I'm going to give this album, it's got to be a 9 out of 10. I mean, it would have been maybe a 9.5 if there's a couple of those little thematic things I liked more, but again, I don't believe in 10 out of 10s, so that's a very high rating. I love this album. Go out and check it out. Give them some love. Get tickets to see them live if you can. The live experience is amazing. This is an entity that I'm just really happy is able to continue to exist and grow and prosper and, you know, just fill out to the point where they're so prevalent that there are so many people able to enjoy this music. So go out, share it with your friends. I think it's a worthwhile endeavor. Anyway, thank you very much for watching. Like, share, subscribe, all that crazy stuff. Let me know in the comments, what do you think? How does this stack for you in terms of Ghost albums as a pure ranking? I don't think it's my favorite, but I also couldn't tell you what my favorite is. I have racked my brain about that specific question for quite a long time now, and I've not been able to come up with a solid answer. So let me know in the comments what you think of this album. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.